We're so happy to have you here with us on the Stronger Marriage webinar produced by the Utah Marriage Commission, hosted by Utah State University. I am Naya Phelps, and we are so excited to have you join us today. In today's webinar, we are so excited to be joined by Dr. Julie Hanks. Dr. Julie Hanks is a licensed psychotherapist, content creator, author of Assertiveness Guide for Women Online Influencer, owner of Wasatch Family Therapy, and host of the Ask Dr. Julie Hanks podcast. With nearly 30 years of experience, Dr. Hanks is passionate about helping women of all ages step into their power and create a life they love. If you have joined us for the CEU credit, make sure to stay on until the end of the presentation. The survey needed for your credit will automatically load onto your screen, and then you'll receive an email from the Utah Marriage Commission with your certificate. You may also email the Utah Marriage Commission to receive your survey on the webinar. Once the survey is completed, you will attain the email with your CEU credit certification. We will now turn the time over to Julie for her presentation.
Wonderful. Thank you, Naya. And I'm so happy that all of you are here. I understand that the chat is turned off, but the Q&A option at the bottom is available. I tend to be more interactive in my presentations, and so I may ask questions, and what I want you to do is just drop your answer in the Q&A since the chat is disabled. So hopefully that will work. We'll try it and see. So I'm going to be talking tonight about creating partnership, marriage, and families. And we're going to have a fun time. I'm going to present to you my model of partnership in marriage and families that I developed as part of my dissertation studies. As Naya said, I am the owner and director of Wasatch Family Therapy. I'm also adjunct faculty at Utah Valley University. And my PhD is in marriage and family therapy. Okay, so gender equality starts at home. Research has shown that women perform the bulk of unpaid work at home, even when both partners work full time. And a researcher in the 80s defined this as the second shift. So women have entered the workforce a lot more readily than men have entered the world of unpaid work. Although that is changing, there's still not a balance. And so there's some really interesting research about when men are at home full time and women are working, women still do the bulk of the unpaid work, even when a male partner in a heterosexual relationship is the at-home parent. So there's an imbalance, and what this model does is kind of help us think about marriage and families differently, so we can have a more balanced marriage and family. All right, so why do we need a different model of family? Well, because families have changed a lot. Legalization of gay marriage in all 50 states in 2015. There are high rates of divorce, remarriage, co-parenting, blended families. So the norm is something other than the nuclear family these days. The majority of women in the US participate in paid employment, even the majority of women with small children. We have an increased life expectancy, so families and couples are caring for aging parents and caring for kids and employment. There's an increase in single parenthood by choice. As I said, there are multiple family forms, so there are lots of grandparents raising their grandchildren, extended families living together, and lots of economic changes. The economic climate is such that a lot of people in the US need to have two incomes in order to have the lifestyle that they want to meet their basic needs. We also have high rates of child abuse and intimate partner violence, which we'll address a little bit later. And in my therapy practice in Utah over the last 30 years, women consistently express exhaustion, overwhelm, and that they're not doing enough or being enough. And men who come into my office usually come because of emotional and relational disconnect. A lot of them come because their female partners say, I need more from you emotionally, or I need you to participate more in family life, or I don't feel connected with you. And so this partnership model of family organization that I will be presenting is going to address these changing factors and help women become less overwhelmed, more balanced, and also help men connect emotionally and relationally in more powerful ways. All right, just like fish do not know that they're in water, we swim in water. We live in a climate that we take for granted. We take for granted that hierarchies are normal, that competition is normal, that a scarcity mentality is normal, comparison, trying to get ahead, contingency-based self-worth. So basing our worth on what we have, what we look like, how much money we make, status in our career, and consumerism. So those are kind of just the water that we swim in that we think is just normal. And there actually are other ways of organizing societies and organizing marriage and family. So I came across Riane Eisler's cultural transformation theory in my my PhD studies, and it changed the way I think about everything: society, relationships, family, being an employer. And I'm really excited to share this theory with you and then show you how I've applied it to marriage and family. But first, I'm going to give you a vision of a different way of organizing a society other than what I outlined that are kind of the norm, that we think are the norm. So there's a civilization that was discovered in the early 1900s called Minoan Crete. It was previously unknown. It was highly civilized and advanced. So from the archaeological findings, there was a celebration of beauty, nature, harmony with the earth. There were no visible signs of war, no idealization of violence depicted in the art. From what they can tell, men and women lived joyfully, participating in all spheres of life. There were differences between the sexes, and they were appreciated, but they weren't used to limit access or power of women like we see in a hierarchical society. Female deity was represented along with male deity. There was a fairly equitable distribution of wealth, not large class stratifications. There was some difference. There were some people who had more than others, but it was pretty flat in terms of the distribution of wealth. And wealth was used to benefit everyone. It was technologically advanced. They had irrigation, paved roads, viaducts. Interestingly, entertainment and religion were intertwined. And again, it was highly technologically advanced. There was a complex social structure that didn't have hierarchy based on an individual's sex. And so this is Minoan Crete, existed 3650 to 1400 BCE. So this is like a different way of organizing. So Riane Eisler took this and other archaeological findings and started researching the way that societies organize. And she came up with the dominator partnership continuum, which is the basis of cultural transformation theory. So in a dominator model, so this is a continuum, right? On the dominator side, it's top-down authoritarian control. The main way that it's organized is hierarchies of domination. So it's organized by ranking. Where are you kind of on the ladder? Better than, worse than, more powerful, more money, less money. There was a high degree of institutionalized violence in dominator societies. Masculinity and masculine things associated with masculinity were more highly valued, and there was a devaluation of soft, quote unquote, soft values like caring, compassion, empathy. So that's the dominator model. You can think of Hitler's Germany as kind of toward one end of the continuum. On the other end is a partnership model that is more illustrated by the Minoan-Crete example. There is a question that says, what exactly is institutionalized violence? So within institutions, it's punitive. Violence is idealized just overall in the culture. And this is a great question. Thank you. So if you look in Western society, in US society, we lean more toward a dominator model. We have a fairly high degree of violence in terms of participation in war, violence depicted in media, violence in family life. So it's kind of violence at every level of society. Thank you for that question. So on the partnership model, and it's more democratic. Now, this is something that people misunderstand. There are hierarchies, and hierarchies of actualization is misspelled, I just noticed. But they're hierarchies of actualization. And actualization is having everyone reach their potential. So the hierarchies in a partnership, the leadership is not responsible to dominate and keep other people in control. Their job is to lift everyone. So that's what a hierarchy exists for, not to control, dominate, kind of have haves and have-nots, in-group, out-group, like the dominator model. This is really important. In partnership, it's organized by linking instead of ranking. And just that distinction has been really powerful for me. And I ask myself this on a regular basis, am I focused on linking or ranking? Am I focused on being better than, being right, being, above someone else, or on connecting and recognizing the humanity of everyone? In partnership societies like Minoan-Crete, nonviolent, peaceful solutions are always sought. Violence is only used as a last resort. And in the partnership model of societies, the masculine and feminine are equally valued. So strength, physical strength is valued, and caring for other people is valued, right? And then the caring, connection, nurturing is valued by everyone and participated in by everyone. So any questions about this dominator partnership continuum? Drop those in the Q&A. I'm happy to answer those before we move on and then apply this to, how does this apply to actual family life? Because Brianne Eisler is a social scientist, so she's talking about larger societies, right? How people organize. But we're going to bring it to marriage and family. Okay, so I think about the dominator model as a ladder, right? There's like a hierarchy. And I think about that, like laying the ladder down and it becomes a bridge. And that's more like partnership. It's more flat. It's more connecting. Um, Examples of societies in between. Yes, the Nordic countries tend to be more in between and leading more toward partnership. They they tend to have they rank high on the happiness scale. They have lots of built-in support for families and for nurturing, like paternity leave. They have trying to think of other. They tend to be peaceful, so that is like the Nordic countries. So if you kind of research, they tend to lean in the middle and or a little bit more toward the partnership model. Thank you for that question. Okay, so a partnership model of family organization. We're going to apply this partnership model to families. And I developed the 8 C's of partnership families. They're cooperative parental leadership or adult leadership, connection orientation, caretaking emphasis, collaborative roles and rules, celebration of all contributions, compassionate communication, conscious language use, and creation and collection of partnership stories. So these are ways that you can think about and organize your marriage and your family differently than what we've inherited from the dominator model. The family model that we've inherited and marriage tends to be hierarchical. It's like, oh, he's in charge or she wears the pants. Well, the opposite of patriarchy is not like matriarchy is just the same thing, just flipped. Partnership is actually the solution to both. And that's when men and women work together. Okay, so I just want to clarify this model is not about splitting everything in family life or in marriage 50-50. Okay. So it's not about everything has to be even. It's not about putting down traditional roles either. So you can have a partnership family where there are traditional roles, where a man is the provider, the woman is the nurturer. So you'll see kind of how what the difference is. It's about valuing paid and unpaid work equally. So part of what we've seen in the U.S., the reaction to a dominator is like, like now women wanting, like in family, you think, she wears the pants. It's not either or. It's let's put things together. So no matter who's doing the paid work, it's valued. No matter who's doing the unpaid work, it's valued. And in our society, we've tended to equate paid work with masculinity, with productivity, and unpaid work with femininity and reproductivity, and devalued that. So it's not like let's tell everybody that they have to be employed in order to be important. It's like, no, let's value all of the work that men and women are doing in family life equally. It's about sharing decision-making responsibility. So it's about valuing everyone's time equally. And it's about removing ranking from family contributions. What I mean by that is in my practice, I've seen a lot that the person who makes the money has more power in the system, in the family system. For example, I was working with someone and she had a commitment and her partner was going to take care of their children so she could do this commitment because she was the primary caregiver at home. And he had something come up for work And it was just assumed that his thing would trump hers because his was associated with money and hers wasn't. So we rank things with, that's the water we live in, without even recognizing that we do it. So feel free as we go to type your questions in the Q&A, okay? All right, so cooperative parental leadership or cooperative adult leadership. So oftentimes there are adults in the family that aren't the parents. You might have, you might be living in a multi-generational family. And then I've also taken each of these 8 C's and kind of translated them for kids. And so at the end of this, I'll give you a link where you can download the list of the 8 C's and a list of the 8 C's for kids. So cooperative parental leadership, basically it's grown-ups lead the family and make decisions together that are for the good of all family members. So the 4 aspects of cooperative adult leadership are egalitarian relationships, actualization hierarchy, mutual decision-making, and authoritative parenting style. This is a quote that I really like. As a microcosm of society, the family can act as a crucible for the creation of partnership. It seems the most obvious place to start with the people we love the most and are the closest to. Okay, actualization hierarchy. So actualization is the realization of our highest human potential to inspire, support, and empower others and ourselves. So family members' values and needs don't need to be ranked in order of importance or order of power, but decisions are made with the welfare of all in mind. We have a question from Jillian about authoritative parenting, and we're going to get to that. Egalitarian relationships first, and then we'll talk about authoritative parenting. Equal partnership marriage or egalitarian relationships are those in which partners share equally all benefits, burdens, and responsibilities. Now, that doesn't mean, again, 50-50, but it just means they are together, and no one is kind of alone in the burdens that they carry or the benefit that they get. Let's see. Egalitarian couples reported having the most sex. Women's relationship satisfaction is related to egalitarianism in housework. And in egalitarian relationships, there's a greater sense of fairness for both partners. So mutual decision making, it's not who does what, it's who decides who does what. Right? So if in a heterosexual relationship, the male decides that, they decide together the male is going to be the primary parent at home and the female is going to be the primary provider, great. Or vice versa, great. They're making the decision together. It's not just default. And that's a big difference. So authoritarian parenting that balances clear, high parental demands with high emotional responsiveness and recognition of a child's autonomy. And high parental demands and high responsiveness are predictors of competence from childhood through adolescence in children. So often there's high demand and low emotional responsiveness, and that's authoritarian. Low demand and high emotional responsiveness can be indulgent, and then there can just be low on both, that's uninvolved or neglectful parenting. Okay, the second C is connection orientation. We treat others in ways that bring us closer and respect each other's feelings. We see our family as interconnected with other systems. And with systems, I mean, like with extended family, with community, with maybe church community, with a global community. part of this is developing secure attachments, and early in childhood, that is a very important aspect. I'm not going to go through all of these. I'm going to maybe just pick one, but attuned parents are necessary for infant and children's growth. Attuned and affectionate parents and caregivers. Connection orientation, process oriented. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that later, but let's talk about interconnection with larger groups. So that's seeing we have individuals, and in our family, we're a system. And then within our family, we're part of extended family and community groups, religious groups, and then, global, our country, other countries, and then a global community. So seeing yourself as interconnected is part of a connection orientation. An example that I have here is Shanna and Doug. They have 4-year-old twins. And they said, we work hard in our church community and try to show that there's life beyond our nuclear family. We do events with extended family and aim to see family that lives out of state at least once a year. So that was an example that Shanna and Doug offered in terms of how they are interconnected with larger groups to foster a connection orientation. The third is a caretaking emphasis. So taking care of family members and the household is everyone's job. It's not just mom's job. It's not just, female's job. Everyone's job is to take care of everyone. And I'm not talking about parentifying children, right? It needs to be age appropriate. But I think that that we could all do better as a society in helping children feel responsible for participating in family life. So with the caretaking emphasis, caring for others is highly valued. All family members participate in caring for each other, and we value caring for others and the earth, and we see ourselves, again, here's the interconnection, that linking instead of ranking. So if included in the GDP, care work at home would add another 30% to 50% to our GDP. In our economic structure, we do not count unpaid work as productive work. And what we don't count often doesn't count. We don't value it as much. And so there's been a lot of work really trying to give value to the unpaid care work at home so people can see it and value it. We are the only developed nation that has no national funding for parental leave, and we invest the least in early childhood care and education. The ROI for early childhood education is between $7 to $16 return per dollar invested in children. And so we like to say as a society we value children, but we actually in these ways do not provide a lot of support as a country for children and families. 1 in 3 women in the US are living below or on the brink of poverty because they are doing the bulk of unpaid or underpaid care work. Caregiving is everybody's job. It's, like I said, it's for all genders, all ages, all stages of life. We are connected with each other. Shanna and Doug, parents of toddlers, they show this caregiving, caretaking emphasis as any predetermined absences for doctor's appointments, school closings, etc., are alternated between us. We also split days, taking a half day from home to coordinate each other's meetings. So they are both employed and have a family. I feel we're a good team. It takes a lot of communicating to get it right, though. And then caring for nature and recognizing that interconnection. So being aware of the earth, of natural resources. Number 4, collaborative roles and rules. We decide who does what in our family. No one gets stuck in one role. Okay, so fluidity and gender expectations, moving from roles to rules, which is process. I'll explain that in a little bit. And then expansion of acceptable behaviors for males and females. Fluid gender expectations. Beth says, when the toilet broke this week, we took a trip to Home Depot. My husband said, we have sons. They need to know how to fix things. When I raised my eyebrow, he's rephrased and said, we have children. They know how to fix things. So that's an example of kind of getting out of these gender stereotypes and recognizing that all genders need to learn how to do grown-up things. So moving from roles to rules or process, here's a little bit more about what that means. So when people get together, they exchange clues as to how they're going to define the nature of the relationship. And then we modify the relationship in a reciprocal way. And so we tend to think of relationships as like interactions, lines, but it's really circular. And we kind of come up with rules of engagement as family. So I hope that makes sense. I could do a whole presentation on this one thing, but I hope that makes sense. So instead of like playing a role, focusing on what are the rules of engagement in our family? How do we treat each other? Expansion of acceptable behavior for all genders. Lana and Vaughn, they have 4 children, 2 in college, 2 at home. We take turns cooking and doing chores for cleaning are rotated, and for the most part, it works. As we're in school, as we were in school, my spouse and I worked out schedules so that our older children were never in daycare. We worked night jobs and whatever, so one of us was always home. There are clipboards with daily jobs that we think should be done, and people just look at the list. So that was how they handled the expansion of acceptable behavior. 5 is celebration of all contributions. So we celebrate everyone's gifts and talents. There's no right way to be a boy or a girl, a mom or a dad, or anyone in between. And I recognize there are also non-binary folks. And so being able to celebrate the work and the contribution of everyone. And when I was presenting on this in a previous workshop, someone said, really, everyone's contributions, like even the kid who's like the teenager that's acting out or that's being difficult? And I thought about it for a second and I said, yeah, actually, because the acting out teenager is an opportunity for the family to learn and grow. I learned more from my most difficult teenager as a person about unconditional love than from any of my kids who were less difficult. And so really, when I say all contribution, yeah, the difficult people who are going through a difficult time, whether it's a partner or a child, actually can have gifts to share and things to teach us that are really painful but necessary. Contributions of males and females in family life are celebrated. There's a de-emphasis on gender stereotypes, and there's an integration of masculine and feminine in each individual. So every person is seen as making a contribution to the system. So whatever work a male partner does or a female partner does is valued. There's an acknowledgement of physical, emotional, and mental labor, acknowledgement of leadership and nurturing. There's no rigid stereotyping. Their strength and vulnerability are both honored. Invisible labor is seen and valued. So invisible labor, I kind of divide it into two parts. There's emotional labor and mental labor. Emotional labor is modifying your emotions to support someone else, right? So, for example, therapists do a lot of emotional labor, right? I may be going through a crisis in my personal life, but when I go to work, I show up, I'm interested. I have to put my things on hold because I need to be there for my client, right? And then mental labor is the tracking. It's the, you know, who the physicians are, whose chores are what, remembering family birthdays, celebrations, preparing for holidays, like all those kind of things that happen in family life. Integration of masculine and feminine in each individual. Carl Jung talked about the collective unconscious, and he says in every male there is a feminine aspect, and in every female there's a masculine aspect. And for those of you who are religious, many different religions have a figure that has an integrated masculine and feminine. So I just think that's kind of interesting. And just in general, in living systems, integration and flexibility are signs of health. So being integrated and flexible are signs of health. If you think about if your body is integrated and flexible, that is a sign of health. And then the sixth, compassionate communication. So this is how we communicate. Number 7 is actually what we communicate. And I'll kind of describe the difference. We speak kindly to others and to ourselves. We never use physical force or mean words. And this doesn't mean there aren't consequences, but you can have consequences. You can have hard conversations with your partner without being mean and using force. So compassionate communication consists of nonviolent conflict resolution, development of empathy, and the practice of self-compassion. There are some really great books on nonviolent communication skills. There are just four parts to this, and I think they're really, really good. Differentiating observation from evaluation. So, gosh, I've noticed that you've been kind of irritable, honey. Like, what's going on? What's going on? Like being curious. That's an observation. An evaluation is you're being such a jerk. What is your problem? Like I'm saying a judgment instead of an observation. And just if you take just that away from this, like that can be life-changing. Make observing statements instead of evaluation statements. Differentiating thinking from feeling. So I feel sad when you are talking to me with a condescending tone or a irritable tone, because I think that you're not valuing me. So feelings are different from thoughts. In communication, in nonviolent communication, you connect with the universal human needs and values in every person that you're communicating with. You see their humanity, even if you differ greatly. And then making requests of what you would like in a clear way that states what you do want. So instead of what you don't, we're so good at saying, I don't want you to do that anymore. No, don't do that. But what do you want? It is so much harder to state that. And so Rosenberg is the developer of nonviolent communication skills. Development of empathy. Teresa Wiseman developed these 4 steps of empathy that I think are really important. Perspective taking. Right? So what is it like to be my wife right now? What is it like to be my husband right now? staying out of judgment, recognizing emotions, and then communicating effectively. And then there's self-compassion and compassion. So self-compassion has three aspects, and this is developed by Dr. Kristen Neff. Mindfulness, so just being aware of what's happening for you. Self-kindness, treating yourself with kindness. And then common humanity, which is recognizing that your suffering matters, and your suffering or your pain is what actually connects you to all other human beings, including your loved ones. So being aware of what's going on with you, treating yourself as you would treat a beloved other person, and then recognizing your common humanity and that it connects you with other people. When we're suffering, we tend to withdraw from our partners and loved ones, and recognizing that's actually the thing that we have in common is that everyone has experienced suffering. A great skill for assertive communication, and also that part of separating the feeling and thinking, is I feel blank when you, and then that's the other person's specific behavior, because I think blank. It would mean a lot to me if, that's the request, blank. I feel when you, because I think it would mean a lot to me if, and then you're stating what you want, not what you don't want. Conscious language use. So this is actually, so compassionate communication is how we communicate. Conscious language use is what we communicate. We respect others' differences and use words that value those differences. So words reflect an awareness of diversity and gender inclusion. Language includes shared responsibility for caring, and circularity and complexity are acknowledged and embraced. And we'll go through each of those. So there's awareness and correction of unintentional racial, religious, or any kind of language that puts down another human being. So using inclusive language, humankind instead of mankind, just being aware of that our language has been informed by a dominator model that values masculinity more than femininity and men more than women. And then also an awareness of racism, sexism, ageism, different abilities. And an awareness of this takes work. And an example of this in my own life, I'm really aware of sexism. I've experienced it, and I speak out about it a lot. And I realized I can't expect men to understand sexism unless I'm willing to do hard work, like in other areas. Like, so for a year, I really studied racism and privilege, and I read books by people of color, and I just thought, okay, I'm going to put in the work in this other area where I might have blind spots, and if I expect men to do the work to acknowledge and work toward eradicating sexism, I want to work toward these, other isms that I may not be aware of. So taking responsibility for that. Circularity and complexity are acknowledged and embraced. So again, we're talking about relationships are circular and co-created. We can't blame the other person. In any relationship, it takes two to create the relationship. What this does is eliminate shame and blame, promotes responsibility. It avoids reductionism. You're always, you never, or oversimplifying. If you would just do this, if you would just load your dishes, then I wouldn't get mad at you. Like, that's a reductionistic statement. And then moving from binary thinking to complex thinking. An example of conscious language use for Beth and John. My husband is parenting, not babysitting. right? Babysitting assumes it's a wife's job in a heterosexual relationship, and the husband's helping, right? They avoid saying "man up." They said we let our boys cry and be vulnerable. We use the term woman to describe an adult woman, not girl. Oh, the girls over at the office, or the women. We avoid phrases that demean other lifestyles. And then number 8 is collection and creation of partnership stories. We look intentionally for entertainment that shows kindness and partnership. We seek out stories by and about women and underrepresented groups. So conscious inclusion of partnership-themed stories, myths, and religious texts, encouragement of creativity as an approach to life, and supporting minority and women's creativity and art. So seeking partnership-themed movies and art. So seeking to reduce our exposure to violence as adults and for our children. Seeking stories with strong female characters. Like, this takes intention because there's such a lack of balance. We have seen improvement over the last several years, but like strong female characters, strong older characters too. There's lots of ageism in art and entertainment. Seek stories that illustrate peaceful problem solving. Seek media that highlights caring and connection. And then creativity as an approach to life. Instead of asking a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? Ask them, what problem do you want to solve? Seeing creativity as an approach, a way to approach life. It's not just a product or like a fine art product. Part of seeking a creative approach to life is embracing mistakes. And then supporting female and minority art. These are just some examples that I have at my house. The painting on the right is a Caitlin Connolly piece that really speaks to me. This flyer in the middle is a BIPOC Broadway cabaret fundraiser that I just recently shared. I try to elevate women and minority voices on social media. And so I shared this to kind of spread the word about this mental health BIPOC event that I thought looked really, really interesting. And then this is a book that I bought several years ago about stories of courageous women in the Bible. And I remember reading it with one of my daughters, and reading books that highlighted female characters actually brought her to tears because it was so foreign. And it's like, oh, wow. Like, and so supporting and consciously looking for representation that isn't just the norm is part of creating a partnership family. All right, let's go to open the Q&A. I haven't seen any others come in. Okay, let's see. Oh, there are a few. Let's see. In my experience, it seems to be changing that the influence of unpaid workers is growing over those of paid in the home, putting down patriarchy systems by going to the other extreme. Either extreme is not good, right? It's not about ranking. So that's a great example. It's not about who's more important or putting anyone down. It's about we're about connecting, not ranking, right? Thank you for that. This is also great, and I can see how it will work, but how do you do this with a sick spouse or a spouse who might not be on board? Well, you have them watch this webinar. You download this list, you put it on the fridge so they can start being exposed to this different way of thinking about families. It's important to have, if you have a spouse, to have your spouse on board. there seems to be greater interest in this model from women than men. Women tend to be more acutely in pain because of how families are structured, in my experience, or at least they're talking to me about it. So with a sick spouse, it's really, so the linking is really important. So drawing on the broader community, on family members, on church community, on bringing in other help, it's really, really hard. And in that system, if there are children, you may need to expect the kids to do a little bit more, still age appropriate, but do a little bit more than what they might otherwise be expected to do with two able parents. Also, how does this work in blended families? Because it's often like you do your kids and I do mine. Even if it's not said, it seems like to be assumed more with other blended families I talk to. Yeah, and that actually is okay if that's decided on consciously by both partners. You can divide things up however you want and whatever works, right? But also with this connection orientation and integration with larger systems, I think it can be helpful to integrate. So how this looks in a blended family really depends on the blended family, what the dynamics are, what the other, if there are other parents in the picture. But you can divide it that way if that's what you decide. But it's not the only way to do it. Why are more and more parents working outside the home and as a result putting their kids in daycare when they are not loved all day? Okay, so, well, I think that you're making a big assumption that they're not loved. And not all kids are in daycare. A lot of kids are, but some are in in-home care. Some have nannies. Some have grandma taking care of them. So I think that's an assumption that kids in daycare aren't loved. And the economic climate is such that a lot of families don't have a choice in order to survive. It requires two people employed. So I think another question is, why aren't there more supports in place for working parents? How did your family life change when you implemented these ideas? Was there anything that surprised you, or was it harder than you thought? That's a really, really good question. I have been implementing these principles for some of these for a long time, and my own family experience helped inform this model, or as part of what informed it. When I was doing my PhD, my dissertation chair said, write about what you know. And I was like, well, we kind of have figured out how to raise a family and both of us have careers and support each other and kind of require things of our kids. And so maybe I'll study that and write about that. So I've kind of been implementing these by challenging the status quo, but it's definitely been driven by me. I was the one in pain saying, wait, where's my wife that I get to just wake up and leave and go to work? What I had, I would just question the assumptions that my husband and I both brought into our marriage. Anything that surprised you? Yes. I am so delighted at how connected my husband is to our children. He's in charge of Sunday dinners. He wraps and cooks for them, invites them. He talks to them on the phone probably more than I do. He is very connected to and we mostly have adult children now. Next month or 2 months, it'll be all adult children. Woohoo! So that has been great. How connected he has been to our kids is the gift to them and to him and to me, because that I'm not in charge of facilitating his relationship with them. They have their own relationship because he's taken care of them throughout their life. Let's see. Speak about the impact of trauma in a history of one or both adult partners. So I don't know that we'll be able to address that in the next 5 minutes. It's a really great question. If there is a trauma history, I highly suggest that the individual who has the trauma and the couple are in therapy with a licensed therapist to process that trauma. So the impact of it depends on what the trauma is, who it was perpetrated by, and how that manifests in the marriage and family life. A warning based on my experience. If a female spouse uses it to seek change by saying they found their voice and trying to take down the other, then conflict will build into contention and it will lead to destruction of the family. It's a slippery slope how you challenge it. Be careful how you approach it. This is what happened to our family. I came from a traditional Southern family. We are now divorced and things are not any better for us. So again, partnership is not about ranking. It's not about putting or taking anyone down, right? It's about everyone having a voice. Everyone's contribution is valued. So if everyone has a voice, no one needs to find their voice, right? It's just everyone has it in your family, in your partnership family. How do you reduce exposure to violence when that is what pervades all aspects of society? You have control over your home. They will be exposed, but you can control what they're exposed to when they're in your care. So they will be exposed to it, but you can do what you can to limit the exposure when they're with you. Unfortunately, because we live in a culture that leans toward the dominator end of the continuum, we idealize violence. And so my greater vision with this model is if kids grow up with partnership as the norm, with nonviolent communication, without violence or threat of violence or shame in families, if they see males and females working together in partnership, if they feel valued and secure in their families, that changes their brain, that changes their expectations as they grow, and they will expect that and create that wherever they go. So if we can create partnership in marriage and families, then that can change the society, because that group of kids grows up and doesn't tolerate a society that glorifies violence, doesn't tolerate sexism in the workplace, doesn't tolerate putting down other groups or othering people. Let's see. I think that's all the questions that have come through, and it looks like we're right about on time. Let's see. Can I do one more, Naya?
Yep, go for it.
Okay, I'll do one more. I like that you said everyone has a voice. Unfortunately, cancel culture is real. If one voice rules over another or cancels it altogether or doesn't tolerate a different perspective, it is destructive. I like the collaborative family system. Yes, it's not about silencing anyone. It's about working together, seeing each other's humanity and seeing the humanity and interconnectedness of everyone. So thank you for taking the time to be here tonight, for spending this time. I really, really appreciate it. Please go to this link, drjuliehanks.com, partnership/families. You can get a download that you can put on the fridge or on your mirror. There's a download of the adult version and the kid version. And then also, here's my contact information. If you would like to contact me, would you would like just find a therapist in Utah, wasatchfamilytherapy.com. If you want to email me for follow-up, drjuliehanks.com. Thank you again for spending this hour with me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julie. That was so good. And thank you to everyone that has joined us on today's webinar. We're so grateful for you and your questions and participation. Once again, if you're here, if you attended for the CEU credit, make sure you stay on until the end of the webinar for your survey, and then you will be emailed that certificate. Or you can email the UMC email, which is marriagecommission@usu.edu for your survey. Upon completion, you will get the certificate email from us. Have a great night, everybody. Thank you so much for joining.